Hey, this is JT. Welcome to the backyard and welcome to Bodyweight Strength. In this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to train your biceps and your triceps. Now, that means we're going to be isolating the bis and tris, which is not how I personally train. I don't do these movements, and the reason is I train for strength with the end goal of being able to perform specific advanced bodyweight strength elements. These are going to be things like a full planche, an iron cross, stuff that is important to me, which may not be important to you or to other people. And I understand there are a lot of people who really like to get some bicep curls in. They like tricep extensions. They like to finish off, for example, a chest workout with some, what they would call a finisher. So they like to target the triceps at the end of the chest workout, like finish off the biceps at the end of a rowing or pulling workout. And so that's kind of what I'm going to show you in this video. Especially, I think right now, a big part of my motivation for shooting this, because I don't train this way, is that there are millions of people on some form of lockdown. And if they're not on lockdown, their gyms are closed anyways. And so there are tons of people right now who are probably really missing a good arm day, missing being able to get their bicep and tricep work in. They don't have dumbbells at home. They don't have cable pulley systems. So I'm hoping this video will help at this point in time because of the situation with everybody being on lockdown. Because of the virus that's going around. So one more point before I get back to the rack and demonstrate for you. There's research out of Brazil, and it's multiple studies spanning entry-level trainees all the way through more advanced trainees to include trainees who are utilizing steroids. So we're talking, this research runs the gamut, beginner to advanced to bodybuilders and the whole 9 yards. And what this research suggests is that if you're already performing compound multi-joint movements, if you're deadlifting, squatting, or in this case, while we're on lockdown, if you're doing pull-ups, push-ups, then adding additional single joint work may not be necessary at all. In the studies, it provides no statistically significant benefit. However, the amount that they add is low volume. It's not a ton of isolation work. So I'm not going to say that there's not a place to isolate. No one should ever do it. What I do say, or what I would say, is that if you're already performing multi-joint compound movements, you're already getting good quality work, and so you may not need to isolate. With that being specified, if you've got the extra time and you want to throw some extra biceps or triceps in, if you want to isolate, then by all means, have at it, and I'm going to give you the tools. Now let me demonstrate. So I'm going to demonstrate these bodyweight skull crushers on a chair, and then I'm going to move to gymnastics rings. I highly suggest you get a set of rings if you don't have them already. They're super versatile, and you'll be able to train your upper body in a progressive manner for the rest of your life with really no limits in sight. With that being said, when it comes to calisthenics, we have to manipulate leverage and work with gravity to make movements either easier or more difficult. And so when it comes to these skull crushers, what you're going to want to do is adjust the height of what you're resting your hands on to either make the movement easier in the case of a higher object, or you can use a lower object to make these more difficult. And what's going to happen is the object gets lower, you move the feet further back, and the movement becomes more difficult. As the feet move further back, you can push into the movement with the lower body, making these even more difficult. What that means is that you could literally be the biggest, strongest, brutish individual possible, and these can scale to provide very efficient, high-intensity tricep work regardless of your strength level. So if you're watching this and you're a beginner, these are for you. If you're watching this and you are a world-class, powerlifter, bodybuilder, strongman, doesn't matter, these are for you. And so I'm going to demonstrate on the back of the chair. And to kind of give you an idea of what I was just talking about, I'm going to get in position, and what you're going to want to do you're going to want to, as is with any high intensity body weight strength element, you're going to want to tighten the core. You're going to want to compress the core so you're not elongating the core. You're not flaring the chest out, okay? You're compressing the core. You want to tighten the glutes. And this is to help you. You're going to notice you're going to be in a bit of a plank position here. And when you are in a hollow body variation, that's going to give you the most stable position where you're able to generate the most power. That's what you're looking for. So what you want to do is get into that hollow body position that I just demonstrated, and I'll get back to that. When you grab the surface, the important thing to remember in a skull crusher is that arms straight out like you're doing a push-up or a bench press is not the top of the movement that you're looking for. What you're actually looking for is greater than a 90-degree angle about here, and then that's going to be the top of the movement. So you're going to then go through flexion and extension, okay, where when you get to the top, you're not here, you're here. Now when I get into position and I demonstrate this, you'll be able to see it. So I'm going to put my hands, my palms on the back of the chair. I'm going to get into a hollow body position. You can see where this would be 90 degrees as in a push-up. If I were to do push-ups, you can see where I'm purposely walking it back into a proper position for a skull crusher. And then what I'm doing from here, I am basically bending at the elbow, slowly coming down just like I have an easy bar in my hands, and I am pressing back up, and that's making the complete repetition. If you have performed skull crushers in the past, this will feel exactly, and I mean exactly, like you're doing easy bar skull crushers. Biggest difference is you can have a super weak core. You could barely be able to hold a plank, and you can go do heavy easy bar skull crushers if you got strong triceps. If you have a weak core, these are going to limit how well you're able to perform these. You're not going to be able to get very high rep because the core is going to give out before the triceps give out. If that's you, you should probably strengthen your core, and that's probably the only thing that'll limit you in doing these is if you have a weak core. When you try these, if they feel too easy for you, remember what I talked about a minute ago. You can press hard down through the toes, drive your body forward a bit, and now the lower body pressing into that skull crusher is going to make the movement more intense and harder to perform. So you should be able to add a little bit of additional intensity if needed by driving that lower body a little bit. Give those a shot. Tell me what you think. If you've got gymnastics rings, we're going to jump from the chair to the rings. The rings are definitely going to be a little higher intensity, and that's going to be the next progression. All right, now I'm going to demonstrate those skull crushers on my gymnastics rings. The thing to remember when you are performing skull crushers or any movement, really any element on a rack like this, if you don't have it anchored to the ground, if you don't have weights on it, then you're not going to be able to put much force either pulling this way, pressing that way. You can see where the rack moves very easily if you're to apply force on the top in either direction. So you want to make sure that your weight is basically being pressed perpendicular to the ground, right? You want 90 degrees if possible, straight down on the rings. So just keep that in mind. You can't stand here and do skull crushers pressing out that way. Your rack's going to tip right over. So if you are a newer trainee, or if your strength, your power to weight ratio is not good, what you're going to want to do, your triceps are weak, for whatever reason, if you want to make your skull crushers easier, what you're going to do is you're going to raise the gymnastics rings, and then what you're going to do is not walk the feet back quite as far. You're going to come back maybe here, as you see that I'm doing, and then it's going to be the same movement. You can adjust the straps to get the rings about shoulder width apart. It's going to be the same movement that we did on the chair. What you want to keep in mind is that you're trying to press straight down on the palms, keeping the force that's generated here pulling straight down on the bar. So what you're going to do, walk the feet back. You're going to get the arms. Again, this would be a bench press. You see my arms are at 90 degrees. That's not what you want. So you're going to walk it back a little bit. And then what you're going to do, you're going to have that bend at the elbow. You're going to come down. And then from here, you're going to press straight out. And so hopefully you can get a good look at that. It's not that difficult to do the way that I just demonstrated it because my feet aren't back very far. And so what's happening is the triceps are responsible for moving a smaller percentage of your total body weight. The further back the feet go and the further down the rings are, the more difficult it becomes. So if you're watching this and you are more advanced and you are a stronger athlete, what you're going to do, you're going to drop those rings quite a bit lower, okay, like I just did. And of course, anywhere intermediate is perfectly fine. You find the place where it works best for you. You're going to walk back much, much farther, okay? Then you're going to come down, and there's your skull crusher. And that's going to be skull crusher for reps if you are very advanced and you are someone who has, you know, a very, very heavy skull crusher. So if you normally isolate those triceps and you just happen to have very strong triceps, if that single or if that double arm work is too easy for you, even when you extend like that, what you can do, you may need to bring the rings up a little higher. And you can start getting into isolateral, unilateral work. And so you can open the legs a bit, and then you can do a single arm skull crusher, okay? And that is a way to further scale the intensity. So you go from rings higher, feet closer together, to dropping the rings, moving the feet further apart. If manipulating the rings and the feet is not enough intensity for you, you can raise, bring the feet in a little, and go to single arm. And single arm is brutal. So these skull crushers will scale with you no matter how strong you are. Give those a shot, and I'll show you how to get the biceps trained. As I alluded to earlier, if you are rowing, if you're doing pull-ups, chin-ups, you're already getting quality bicep work. But if you are not able to perform a high enough volume of pull-ups or rows due to not having the strength developed yet, and you want some additional bicep work or some additional volume for the biceps, then what you're going to do is take your rack and adjust your rings to just about chest height. And then what you're going to do is step on the horizontal bar at the back of the rack and lower yourself so you can see my positioning here. And you're going to curl right up to the rings, right back down. That's going to be full repetitions. And this is going to very closely emulate a preacher curl. If you've been to a traditional gym and you've used a preacher curl station, what happens is it brings the elbow forward, and that's almost exactly the position we were just in. So if you're programming this into your workouts, think about having a preacher station available to you at a standard gym, and that's where you're going to stick these curls. Now, just like with the skull crushers, if you need to scale these to make them either easier or more difficult, the way you're going to do so is by adjusting your rings. So if I were to bring the rings much lower, as you can see here, and in this case, with the rings this low, I don't need to step on that support anymore because I'm no longer going to be pulling at an angle that would cause my rack to tip over. So what I'm going to do, and I'll actually perform them this way for you. So what I'm going to do is get into position. You can see where I'm able to move without the risk of the rack tipping over. And I'm going to curl, back down, curl, back down. Those are very difficult. So no matter how strong you are or how powerful your biceps are, by manipulating the height of the rings, just keep in mind that you either want to be stepping on the horizontal bar, you want to have weight on the back of the rack, or you want to have it anchored into the ground. Just don't want it to fall on you, basically. But by manipulating the height of those rings and extending the feet, just like we did with the skull crusher, you can make these very, very difficult, or you can bring them much, much higher to where more of the body's weight is being supported by the feet, and you are curling a lower percentage of body weight. So again, if you're an overweight trainee and you have a poor power to weight ratio, rings higher for these two movements I showed you is how you want to do it. And if you're a stronger trainee, if you got a good power to weight ratio, rings lower for both movements is how you want to do it. Time to wrap this video up, but before I do, I just wanted to give you some quick thoughts on programming these. Wherever you would insert a tricep extension or a bicep curl into your standard training at your normal gym, you can just insert these and carry on with your regular programming. If you are performing a upper-lower split, then on your upper body day, you're probably going to want to put both of these in together. If you're training single set to failure, then just like the rest of your training, you're going to do one set of these to momentary muscular failure. If you're performing multiple work sets, then you're going to be adding multiple sets of each of these into your training. And if that's the case, I suggest adding these in an alternating fashion, meaning do one set tricep, one set bicep, one set tricep, one set bicep. In between each set, you're going to have a rest period, whatever your rest interval is. And the reason I like to do it that way is you do a set of triceps, and then you're resting. The next set's going to be biceps, and then you're resting. And so from the time that you train triceps until you come back around again and train triceps, that set of biceps in the middle, in a way, gave you a longer rest period before coming back around to the triceps again. And that means that when you do your second set for triceps or for biceps, as it were, what's going to happen is you're going to likely be able to get another rep or a little bit of additional work in on that next set, as opposed to doing 3 sets of triceps in a row and then 3 sets of biceps in a row. And remember, if you're able to get a little bit more work in, even one additional rep out of today's training session, that one additional rep is going to go a long way toward helping you stimulate better strength adaptation or better hypertrophy. So try to structure your training, and that goes for if you were training upper body and you're doing chest and back, obviously, because you're training the entire upper body. I would alternate your push and your pull. I would alternate chest and back. And so it's basically along those same lines of thinking. It's just to give you that little bit of extra rest time between using the exact same musculature again, so that hopefully you're able to get a little bit more work done on that next set comes around. If you have questions on these movements, please feel free to ask. I try to get back to every question. I try to help as much as I can. And so hopefully this helps you keep your training routine as close as possible to what you were doing in your standard gym until we're all off quarantine and we're back to regular life. As always, I appreciate you bearing with me, and thank you for supporting Bodyweight Strength.